Well, guys, are you excited to see some based shit coming from a decorated U.S. general? This guy actually got himself in the news a while ago because he had made a statement defending trans and LGBT members of the U.S. military. If you don't know, while Republicans like Trump love to virtue signal about supporting veterans, the military, they really only do it as a means to an end. If it means helping to secure the older veteran vote, and if it means they have something to say they would rather spend any type of money they don't want spent on something they want it spent on that, helping veterans. But then, let's say Democrats introduce a bill that would provide housing and some sort of welfare to homeless people, which if you look up what percentage of homeless people are veterans, you'll see, wow, anything that helps homeless people broadly would help veterans. They oppose it. Like starkly, like overwhelmingly, they oppose it. The fact is they don't care about veterans, they don't care about our armed forces, but they will virtue signal, and they will use them shamelessly for their own gain. I've called this out for a while, and so has this general, Mark Milley. And a news story has come out because he is back in the news calling out the bullshit of Donald Trump. Trump's top general calls ex-president fascist to the core and, quote, the most dangerous person to this country, new book says. General Mark Milley expressed his concerns about Trump to author Bob Woodward in March 2023. For those that don't know, we've covered another story that broke because of Bob Woodward. Originally, I was like, okay, why is this book being taken as gospel, this Bob Woodward book? What is this guy's deal? Is he like a big deal? Is there a reason that the fact that this came from him alone is why everyone's taking it seriously? Because besides that, there's been not a lot of independent confirmation. There couldn't be, based on like how this was leaked and how deep these leaks are. Turns out Bob Woodward was one of the leakers of the Watergate scandal. Yeah, that Watergate scandal. The Watergate scandal. He was one of the people who broke that story. He is renowned as the guy the journalist, he goes in and he figures out the story and he gets it out there. And so he apparently interviewed this general, and that's what he had to say about Trump. Fascist to the core and the most dangerous person to this country. Mark Milley, the U.S. Army general who Donald Trump appointed as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Wait, what? Oh, I got paywalled. Wait, they did it in the most scummy way possible, where they showed for like 5 minutes the article was readable, and then wait, can I... Okay, no, I can still read it. Okay. I was able to reload it and make it go away. I think I can still read it. I was about to be so mad if they'd hit me with the paywall like New York Times does. Milley, a decorated military officer who became a target for right-wing scorn after it became known that he expressed concerns over Trump's mental stability in the wake of his 2020 election loss to Joe Biden, is described by journalist Bob Woodward in his new book, War, as incredibly alarmed at the prospect of a second Trump term in the White House. The Independent obtained a copy ahead of the book's October 15th release date. In the wake of the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol by a riotous mob of the then-president's supporters, Woodward writes that Milley insisted on securing a meeting with the then newly minted Attorney General Merrick Garland to urge him to investigate domestic violent extremism and far-right militia movements. According to Woodward, a senior Department of Justice lawyer said at the time that Milley's sit-down with Garland might have seen the first ever meeting between a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the country's top civilian law enforcement official. He writes that the general asked for the meeting because he was deeply convinced that Trump remained a danger to the country, even though he had been forced from office after Biden's election win. This general had been, oh my gosh. So this general just straight up is like, yeah, no, Trump is a monster. We are genuinely concerned about him within the military. That is really scary that the military generals are afraid of Trump. Like, think about that for a second. The military generals are afraid of a Trump victory. That is not reassuring. I'll say that. But the Army veteran expressed even more strict concerns to Woodward himself at a March 2023 meeting at the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C. Woodward writes that when he approached Milley at a reception, the general spoke first and told him, "We gotta talk." He told the journalist that no one has been as dangerous to this country as the former president. He asked, "Do you realize, do you see what this man is?" Milley, who has been a source for Woodward's last book, Peril, said he'd glimpsed Trump's true nature when they previously spoke during the writing of that 2021 release, but he had said he didn't know exactly what the ex-president was at the time. "He is the most dangerous person ever. I had suspicions when I talked to you about his mental decline and so forth, but now I realize he's a total fascist. He is now the most dangerous person to this country," General Mark Milley said. "A fascist to the core," he repeated. The general's private comments to Woodward, which had not been previously reported, were echoed in cutting remarks Milley made publicly at his September 2023 retirement ceremony when, without monitoring or mentioning Trump's name, he appeared to take a swipe at the ex-president. In the impassioned speech, he defiantly said the U.S. military is unique among the world's fighting forces because it does not profess fealty to any one person. That is supposed to be true. And it is true, I think, generally. Yeah, I don't think our military is really, like, favorable to one president over another. Like, granted, I think they're unfavorable to Trump, if anything. But they've actually, like, the only problem they have with him is how he's, like, a danger to the country, and they've sworn to protect this country. So I think it's fair that they might have a little bit of a bias against him, the higher-ups in military. They've had to deal with his bullshit. The oath is to the Constitution? Well, technically yes, but the oath in spirit is to the American people. Quote, we don't take an oath to a country. We don't take an oath to a tribe. We don't take an oath to a religion. We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or a tyrant or a dictator, he said. Apparently referencing Trump, he immediately added, and we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that America is, to the idea that America is. And we're willing to die to protect it, he said. Based. Mind you, the idea of America is that it's people, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, so it's people, right? Anyway, I really do appreciate this sentiment. Obviously, he subtweeted Trump before, but now we know overtly he despises him and views him to be a fascist. Now, naturally, conservatives, as they want to do, are going to get really guarded up at the accusation that Trump is a fascist. So I feel like we ought to go over what I feel is one of the most respected and agreed upon by most that aren't like insane conspiracy theorists, I guess, ways to like identify a fascist. And that's Umberto Eco's 14 fascism. I love Umberto Eco's 14 points for identifying fascists because really no definition is good enough. You kind of just have to create a checklist and see how many of the check boxes are marked off. And if a suspicious amount are marked off, then you're probably dealing with a fascist. So let's go ahead and read what these points are. The cult of tradition. One has only to look at the syllabus of every fascist movement to find the major traditionalist thinkers. The Nazi Nazis was nourished by traditionalist, syncretist, damn, I can't say that word, syncretist occult elements. Basically, the way that conservatives operate now, where they make AI-generated images of Trump where he's like Jesus, literally Jesus. You've seen these images. 2, the rejection of modernism. Do I need to say any more? Really? Do I need to say any more? The cult of action for action's sake. How many times have you seen conservatives are like just basically saying you need to act, you need to act, you need to act, even if the form of action is just watching their videos and giving them money. The rejection Oh. The rejection of modernism, we did that. Cult for action's sake. Disagreement is treason. I mean, obviously, we've seen how they treat literally anything they deem to be woke or progressive. They talk about it like they're constantly victimized for their beliefs, but then the instant that someone disagrees with them and is just minding their own business, they try to destroy their lives, get them fired, call them, like, groomers and shit. Like, we've seen how they actually act. Disagreement is treason. Fear of difference. Need I say more? Appeal to social frustration. One of the most typical features of the historical fascism was the appeal to a frustrated middle class, a class suffering from an economic crisis or feeling of political humiliation and frightened by the pressure of lower social groups. So basically, look at what's happening in Springfield, Ohio, where they were convinced that these Haitian immigrants that were able to outbid them on rent prices in that town were a threat to them because, like, white capitalists are fucking them over and giving them low wages and they can't afford to, like, live, and they're blaming the immigrants that can afford higher rent and not the people not paying them enough to live, or hell, even the landlords that are willing to pay or receive these higher rents and just deny locals because they can't afford it, right? Because, like, they'll just raise the rent prices if they realize that there is a market entering the city that can pay those rent prices, and so they did. And that left a bunch of the people in Springfield, Ohio, out to dry. Mind you, Kamala Harris is the only one actually running on policy that will acknowledge this problem, and that is building millions and millions of free, affordable housing around the country. Units, that was the word I was looking for. Appeal to social frustration. The obsession with a plot. The followers must feel besieged. The easiest way to solve the plot is to appeal to xenophobia. The obsession with a plot. What does this remind you of? It can't be that there are just a lot of people that don't agree with them politically. There is a small but loud cabal who has a plot and an agenda to push the message. Obsession with the plot. The enemy is both weak and strong. We went over that literally in the last segment. Look at your average, any conservative talking point. Before, we were going over conservative, like, anti-woke game grifters who were talking about how simultaneously wokeness in games kills every game it touches, like Concord, and it's pushing people away from wokeness by being so bad. But at the same time, it's a virus that is spreading, and if it's not fought against, it's going to destroy all of gaming and Western civilization or whatever, right? Even though, logically, the first, like, argument for why it's bad would suggest that it's a problem that solves itself. The second argument for why it's bad is an argument for why you have to act to solve it, because it's too strong to fail on its own. These are contradictory ideas that the same people will push, even in the same breath. The only consistency is that you should act, for one reason or another, to fight against the enemy. And the enemy you should fight against either because they're weak, and you're somebody who is a predator that is looking for easy targets and wants to, like, target a movement and attack it and hate a movement that is weak and easy to destroy. It appeals on that notion, while also appealing to those that feel like they're victims, who are, in retaliation or self-defense, reactionarily adopting conservative or fascistic opinions and beliefs because they believe they're under attack by a powerful force they need to stand up against or they're going to be destroyed. So two very different types of people prone to reactionary politics are appealed to by fascism by two very contradictory arguments. Pacifism is trafficking with the enemy. Ooh, this is a really good one. It actually ties into the last segment as well. You know how a lot of conservatives have been attacking Act Man? They've been attacking him because he isn't calling out minorities in games, because they consider pacifism trafficking with the enemy. They consider Act Man too passive, so he's basically woke to them. That's actually a really good, I forgot that one. Contempt for the weak. I mean, that I shouldn't have to say much more. Everybody is educated to become a hero. In fascist ideology, heroism is the norm. This cult of heroism is strictly linked with the cult of death. This isn't necessarily the positive thing that it might sound like. The cult of heroism is the idea that you were born to die a heroic, sacrificial death. And that may sound good in a sort of selfless way when you, like, think about it, but when you realize what it actually means in practice, it usually means dying for your country, dying for nationalism. That's the sacrifice you're making. Being convinced that dying for a country is like saving people and sacrificing yourself and being a hero. Machismo and weaponry. Obviously a big part of modern-day conservatism, but not exclusive to modern-day conservatism. Mind you, none of these points are exclusive to fascism. That's why I like this as a definition more than a single, like, paragraph definition, because there are plenty of ideologies that meet a good handful of these points that aren't fascist. But if something meets a lot of these points, or if someone meets a lot of these points, like Trump, then they're probably fascist. If it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. That's pretty much what this line of points argues when it comes to fascism. Selective populism. This is a really good one. How often do you see conservatives co-opting leftist talking points in favor of the working class in order to push fascism, far-right beliefs on the working class? Trump does this a lot, like with immigration, right? And all of his economic policy where he says, I'm going to lower taxes for you guys. And then finally, fascism speaks in newspeak. All the Nazi or fascist school books made use of an impoverished vocabulary and an elementary syntax in order to limit the instruments for complex and critical reasoning. This is why words like woke are used to consolidate and demonize and simplify what the left believes or what any form of, like, leftist theory posits. If you can just put it all under one simple, one-syllable, demonized word, then you can propagandize against it effectively without accidentally exposing those that you are trying to brainwash to the enemy's worldview. You can keep them in the echo chamber while also giving them ammo that they need to fight against the enemy. Trump meets literally every one of these points. Like, the GOP as a whole these days meets literally every one of these points. A lot of conservatives who make YouTube videos on the internet meet almost every single one of these points. When I say that Trump is a fascist, and when General Mark Milley says that Trump is a fascist, it's not an exaggeration. He is. He objectively is. These are 14 things that are identified about every fascist regime in the past, and these are all true of the GOP, Republicans, and Trump, specifically. Mark Milley was cooking here. That's all I gotta say. I think it's bad for Trump that even people that are high up in his administration from when he was president are now calling him out as dangerous to this country. Anyway, with all that said, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like. Every thumbs up goes a long way to push my content in the algorithm, forcing YouTube to boost my stuff, and brings in new viewers. It really does help a ton, as does commenting down below. It actually compounds that effect too, so I really do appreciate it. You can also subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so that YouTube actually tells you whenever I go live or upload, because believe me, they won't do so otherwise. I can confirm that from experience. On top of that, if you want to see more from me on other platforms, you can follow my social medias linked down below in the description, and don't forget to join my fan Discord linked down below as well. It's the main hub of my fan base and community, and on top of that, I host game events, call-in streams, watch parties, and I announce all my new uploads and streams there too. So, if you haven't already joined, make sure to hop in there so you don't miss anything. Finally, if you feel like it and you can afford it, please consider supporting me financially by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me financially through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buying merch of the Streamlabs link down below. I really appreciate it, and it really helps to keep the roof above my head and the lights on here at the Xander Hall studio. So thank you once again, and no matter how you support me, even if you're just a lurker, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again.